Right now, at this very moment, you have a choice. You can continue living the same way you've been living, making excuses, waiting for the perfect moment, or you can decide that today is the day everything changes. Today is the day you stop being a prisoner to your own weakness and start building the discipline that will set you free. I know what you're thinking. Discipline equals freedom? That sounds like a contradiction. How can discipline, something that restricts you, something that requires you to say no to things you want, actually give you freedom? Stay with me for the next hour, and I promise you'll understand not just how this works, but why it's the most powerful truth you'll ever learn about taking control of your life. My name might not matter, but what I'm about to share with you comes from one of the most respected voices in leadership and personal development, Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL commander who has distilled decades of extreme experience into principles that can transform any life. This isn't theory. This isn't feel-good motivation that fades by Tuesday. This is battle-tested wisdom that has worked in the most demanding situations imaginable. Here's the thing about discipline that most people get completely wrong. They think discipline is punishment. They think it's about depriving yourself, making life harder, adding more rules and restrictions. But that's exactly backward. Discipline is the shortcut to everything you want. Discipline is the path that cuts through all the confusion, all the excuses, all the wasted time and energy. Discipline is what separates those who dream from those who achieve. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two people. Person wakes up whenever they feel like it, eats whatever they want, works when the mood strikes them, exercises only when motivated, and spends money impulsively. Person B wakes up at the same time every day, follows a structured routine, maintains consistent work habits, exercises regularly regardless of motivation, and manages their finances deliberately. Who has more freedom? Person A might seem free in the moment, but they're actually enslaved by their impulses, their moods, their circumstances. Person B has created systems that give them control over their time, their health, their productivity, and their future. Person B has real freedom, the freedom to choose their destiny instead of just reacting to whatever happens. This is the first fundamental principle we need to understand. Discipline creates options. When you're disciplined with your time, you create more time. When you're disciplined with your money, you create financial security. When you're disciplined with your health, you create energy and longevity. When you're disciplined with your learning, you create opportunities. Discipline doesn't limit your choices, it multiplies them. But let's get practical here, because understanding the concept is just the beginning. How do you actually build discipline? How do you transform from someone who struggles with consistency to someone who executes relentlessly? The answer starts with something so simple that most people dismiss it entirely. Getting up early. I'm talking about the alarm clock. That moment when it goes off and your brain starts negotiating. 5 more minutes. I didn't get enough sleep. I can start tomorrow. It's too cold. It's too dark. Right there, in that moment, you're making the most important decision of your day. You're either choosing discipline or choosing weakness. You're either taking control or giving control away. When you hit that snooze button, you're not just delaying getting up. You're training yourself to be weak. You're programming yourself to negotiate with your commitments. You're teaching yourself that your word doesn't mean anything, even to yourself. But when you get up immediately when that alarm goes off, when you honor the commitment you made to yourself the night before, you start your day with a victory. You begin with discipline. This isn't just about mornings, though mornings set the tone for everything else. This is about understanding that discipline is a muscle, and like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Every time you choose the disciplined path over the easy path, you're building your capacity for discipline in every other area of your life. Think about it this way. If you can't control when you wake up, how are you going to control your diet? If you can't control your diet, how are you going to control your emotions? If you can't control your emotions, how are you going to control your responses to challenges? If you can't control your responses, how are you going to control your results? Everything is connected. Now, let's talk about something that might surprise you, the relationship between discipline and creativity. Most people think these are opposites. They believe that rules and structure kill creativity, that you need chaos and spontaneity to be innovative. This is another myth that keeps people weak and ineffective. The truth is exactly the opposite. Discipline doesn't kill creativity, it liberates it. When you have disciplined habits around your fundamentals, your sleep, your nutrition, your fitness, your core responsibilities, you free up mental energy and time for creative pursuits. When you're not constantly fighting internal battles about whether to do what you know you should do, your mind is free to explore, to innovate, to create. Consider the great artists, writers, and innovators throughout history. They weren't chaotic, undisciplined people stumbling into greatness. They were incredibly disciplined individuals who created structures that supported their creative output. They showed up consistently, day after day, whether they felt inspired or not. They understood that inspiration is unreliable, but discipline is dependable. This brings us to another crucial understanding. Motivation is overrated. We live in a culture obsessed with motivation. People are constantly looking for that spark, that feeling, that perfect moment when they'll finally be motivated enough to change. But here's what successful people know that others don't: motivation is a feeling, and feelings are temporary. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. You don't need to feel like working out to work out. You don't need to feel like eating healthy to eat healthy. You don't need to feel like studying to study. You don't need to feel like doing the right thing to do the right thing. In fact, the most important actions you'll take in your life will be taken when you don't feel like taking them. That's when discipline matters most. Let me share something that might challenge your thinking about comfort and discomfort. We've been conditioned to avoid discomfort, to seek ease and convenience in everything. But comfort is not your friend if you want to grow, if you want to achieve something meaningful, if you want to become someone worth becoming. Discomfort is information, it's feedback. It's your signal that you're pushing boundaries, that you're growing, that you're doing something that matters. When you're comfortable all the time, you're not advancing. You're just maintaining. And maintaining is another word for slowly declining, because the world around you is constantly advancing. This is why disciplined people actually seek out discomfort. They take cold showers not because they enjoy being cold, but because they're training themselves to do difficult things when they don't feel like doing them. They exercise not because it's always fun, but because they're building physical and mental resilience. They stick to their commitments even when it's inconvenient because they're strengthening their character. Every time you choose the comfortable path when the disciplined path is available, you're weakening yourself. Every time you choose the disciplined path when the comfortable path is right there, you're strengthening yourself. It's that simple and it's that important. But discipline isn't just about individual actions. It's about systems. It's about creating structures in your life that make good decisions easier and bad decisions harder. It's about designing your environment to support your goals instead of undermining them. If you want to eat healthier, don't rely on willpower when you're standing in front of the refrigerator at 10 p.m. Make the disciplined choice at the grocery store. Buy healthy food, don't buy junk food. Create a system where the right choice is the easy choice. If you want to exercise consistently, don't negotiate with yourself every morning about whether to work out. Make it automatic. Set out your workout clothes the night before. Have a specific time, a specific routine, a specific plan. Remove the decision-making from the equation. This concept extends to every area of your life. Your finances: create systems for automatic savings and investment. Your learning: schedule specific times for reading and skill development. Your relationships: build routines for connecting with people who matter. Your work: establish processes that ensure consistent progress toward your goals. The goal is to make discipline easier by making it systematic. You can't rely on willpower alone. Willpower is finite. But systems are renewable. Good systems make good choices effortless. Now, let's address something that everyone struggles with but few people talk about honestly. The voice in your head that argues against discipline. That voice that says you don't need to be so rigid, that you deserve a break, that you can start tomorrow, that it's okay to make an exception just this once. This voice isn't your friend, even though it pretends to be. This voice is the enemy of everything you want to become. This voice keeps you small, keeps you weak, keeps you stuck. Learning to recognize this voice and learning to ignore it is one of the most important skills you can develop. The disciplined person doesn't silence this voice. That's probably impossible. The disciplined person simply doesn't obey it. They hear it, they acknowledge it, and then they do the right thing anyway. They understand that this voice is just noise, not truth. They understand that their actions define them, not their internal commentary. This is where most people get confused about discipline. They think it's about being perfect, about never making mistakes, about having superhuman self-control. But that's not realistic, and it's not necessary. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about getting back on track quickly when you get off track, which you will. The disciplined person doesn't beat themselves up when they miss a workout or eat something unhealthy or waste time on social media. They simply return to their disciplined path as quickly as possible. They don't let one mistake become a pattern. They don't let a bad day become a bad week. They understand that discipline is a practice, not a destination. Let's talk about something that might be the most important aspect of discipline, the compound effect. Just like money that grows through compound interest, disciplined actions compound over time to create extraordinary results. The problem is that most people can't see this compound effect because it works slowly and quietly. When you exercise consistently for a week, you might not see much difference. When you exercise consistently for a month, the changes are subtle. When you exercise consistently for 6 months, people start to notice. When you exercise consistently for years, you become a completely different person, not just physically but mentally and emotionally as well. This compound effect applies to everything. Reading just 20 minutes a day doesn't seem like much. But over a year, that's over 120 hours of reading, equivalent to multiple college courses. Saving just $10 a day doesn't seem significant, but over decades, with compound interest, it can mean the difference between financial security and financial stress. The disciplined person understands this compound effect and trusts the process even when they can't see immediate results. They know that consistency over time beats intensity without consistency every single time. Here's something that will change how you think about obstacles and setbacks forever. Most people see challenges as reasons to quit, as evidence that they're not cut out for whatever they're trying to achieve. But the disciplined person sees challenges differently. They see obstacles as training. They see setbacks as opportunities to prove their commitment. They see difficulties as the price of admission to a better life. When you're trying to build a new habit and you face resistance, whether it's internal resistance like lack of motivation, or external resistance like other people questioning your choices, that resistance isn't a sign that you should stop. It's a sign that you're doing something important. Anything worth doing will be difficult. If it were easy, everyone would do it and it wouldn't be valuable. This is why disciplined people don't avoid problems. They solve them. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They create better conditions through their actions. They don't make excuses, they make progress. They understand that the path to freedom runs directly through difficulty, not around it. Think about the areas of your life where you've been making excuses. I don't have time to exercise. I can't afford to eat healthy. I'm not smart enough to learn that skill. I'm too old to change. These aren't facts. These are stories you're telling yourself to avoid the discomfort of discipline. But every excuse you make is a choice to stay exactly where you are. Let's get specific about how to implement this in your daily life, because understanding principles without application is worthless. Start with what I call the non-negotiables, the fundamental habits that form the foundation of a disciplined life. First, establish a morning routine that you follow regardless of how you feel. This doesn't need to be complicated or time-consuming, but it needs to be consistent. Wake up at the same time every day. Make your bed immediately. Do some form of physical activity, even if it's just 5 minutes of stretching or push-ups. Eat a healthy breakfast. Plan your day. These simple actions create momentum and structure that carries forward into everything else you do. Second, create boundaries around your time and energy. Learn to say no to things that don't align with your priorities. This sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things for most people to do. We want to please everyone, to be involved in everything, to never miss out. But saying yes to everything is saying no to what matters most. Discipline requires the courage to protect your time and focus. Third, develop systems for the important areas of your life. Don't leave your health to chance. Plan your meals and workouts in advance. Don't leave your finances to impulse. Create budgets and automatic savings. Don't leave your learning to motivation. Schedule specific times for reading and skill development. Don't leave your relationships to luck. Be intentional about connecting with people who matter. Fourth, track your progress. What gets measured gets managed. You don't need complicated systems or apps. A simple notebook works fine. Track your workouts, your reading, your finances, your key habits. This isn't about perfection or punishment. It's about awareness and accountability. When you track something, you naturally pay more attention to it and make better choices. Fifth, and this might be the most important one, surround yourself with disciplined people. Your environment shapes your behavior more than you realize. If you're constantly around people who make excuses, who avoid challenges, who choose comfort over growth, it becomes much harder to maintain discipline. But if you're around people who have high standards, who push themselves, who support each other's growth, discipline becomes easier and more natural. Now, let's address something that stops many people before they even start: perfectionism. Perfectionism masquerades as a high standard, but it's actually fear in disguise. It's the fear of not being good enough, of making mistakes, of being judged. Perfectionism prevents action because it sets impossible standards and then uses inevitable imperfection as an excuse to quit. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about showing up even when you don't feel ready, even when conditions aren't ideal, even when you know you might not do your best work. The disciplined person understands that done is better than perfect, that consistent effort beats sporadic perfection every time. This is especially important when you're building new habits or learning new skills. You're going to be bad at first. That's guaranteed. You're going to make mistakes. That's part of the process. You're going to have days when you don't feel like continuing. That's when discipline matters most. The question isn't whether you'll face these challenges, but how you'll respond to them. The disciplined response is simple: keep going. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because you committed to it. Your word to yourself is the foundation of everything else. If you can't trust yourself to follow through on your commitments to yourself, why should anyone else trust you? How can you expect to achieve anything significant if you abandon your plans at the first sign of difficulty? Let me share something that might surprise you about the relationship between discipline and happiness. Our culture teaches us that happiness comes from pleasure, from getting what we want, from avoiding what we don't want. But this approach to happiness is actually a recipe for misery because it makes your emotional state dependent on external circumstances that you can't fully control. Real happiness, lasting satisfaction and fulfillment, comes from alignment between your values and your actions, between who you want to be and what you actually do. When you're disciplined, when you're living according to your principles rather than your impulses, you develop genuine self-respect and confidence. You know you can rely on yourself. You know you can handle challenges. You know you're building something worthwhile. This kind of happiness doesn't depend on everything going perfectly in your life. It comes from knowing that you're doing everything within your control to create the life you want. It comes from the satisfaction of hard work, from the pride of overcoming obstacles, from the peace of mind that comes with having your life in order. Disciplined people aren't happy because they avoid problems. They're happy because they know they can solve problems. They're not happy because life is easy. They're happy because they've made themselves strong enough to handle difficulty. They're not happy because they get everything they want. They're happy because they've learned to want what they choose to pursue. This brings us to one of the most powerful aspects of discipline, its ability to transform not just what you do, but who you are. Every disciplined action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Every time you choose the disciplined path, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who does what they say they'll do, someone who can be counted on, someone who doesn't quit when things get difficult. Your identity shapes your actions more than you might realize. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you'll act in undisciplined ways and then use those actions as evidence that you're undisciplined. But if you start taking disciplined actions consistently, your identity begins to shift. You start to see yourself as someone who is disciplined, and that new identity makes future disciplined actions feel more natural and automatic. This is why starting small is so powerful. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You just need to start taking consistent action in one area. Maybe it's making your bed every morning. Maybe it's reading for 10 minutes every day. Maybe it's doing 10 push-ups when you wake up. The specific action matters less than the consistency. When you prove to yourself that you can be disciplined in one small area, it becomes easier to extend that discipline to other areas. Success breeds success. Discipline builds discipline. Confidence creates more confidence. You're not just building habits, you're building your capacity for self-control and self-trust. But here's the ultimate truth about discipline that I want to leave you with. Discipline isn't just about achieving external goals, though it will help you do that. Discipline isn't just about building good habits, though it will help you do that too. Discipline is about freedom, the freedom to choose your response to any situation, the freedom to live according to your values rather than your impulses, the freedom to become the person you're capable of becoming. When you're disciplined, you're not controlled by your emotions. You experience them, but you choose your actions based on what's right, not on what feels good in the moment. When you're disciplined, you're not controlled by your circumstances. You adapt and respond rather than just react. When you're disciplined, you're not controlled by other people's opinions or expectations. You live according to your own standards and values. This is the freedom that discipline creates, not the freedom to do whatever you want whenever you want it, but the freedom to do what you choose to do based on who you choose to be. This is the freedom to pursue meaningful goals even when it's difficult. This is the freedom to maintain your integrity even when it's costly. This is the freedom to keep your commitments even when you don't feel like it. Most people are slaves to their impulses, their moods, their circumstances, their past. They react rather than respond. They drift rather than navigate. They hope rather than act. But you don't have to be most people. You can choose discipline. You can choose freedom. So here's what I want you to do right now, today, before this motivation fades and before you start negotiating with yourself about why you'll start tomorrow instead. Choose one area of your life where you want to be more disciplined. Just one. Maybe it's your morning routine, your exercise, your diet, your finances, your learning, your work habits, whatever matters most to you right now. Create one specific, small, daily action that moves you toward where you want to be in that area. Make it so small that it seems almost too easy. Don't try to transform everything at once. Don't set yourself up for failure with unrealistic expectations. Just choose one simple action and commit to doing it every day for the next 30 days, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what else is happening in your life. And when that voice in your head starts arguing, because it will, remember this, every single person who has achieved anything significant has had to ignore that same voice. Every successful entrepreneur, every elite athlete, every accomplished artist, every effective leader, they've all had to choose discipline over comfort, commitment over convenience, long-term growth over short-term pleasure. The only difference between you and them is that they did it and you haven't yet. But you can. Right now. Today. This moment. You have everything you need to start building the disciplined life that will set you free. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need anyone's permission. You just need to start.